This is Caring for Kids on News Talk 760 WJR. Presented by the Children's Foundation. And here's your host, President and CEO of the Children's Foundation, Larry Burns.
Thanks, Mark. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Caring for Kids October edition. Tonight we have a great episode featuring some very special guests who are making many strides in advancing the health and wellness of children and families. Tonight we'll have Tom Constand, a member of the Children's Foundation Board of Trustees and President and CEO of the Brain Injury Association of Michigan. Then Sherry McRill of the Northeast Integrated Health and Wayne Bradley, Sr. of the Detroit Community Health Connection join us together. And then rounding out our guests will be Dennis Liegghio, founder of No Resolve. It's all coming up next on Caring for Kids, here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Welcome back, everyone. Larry Burns here for the October edition of Caring for Kids here on WJR, the great voice of the Great Lakes. And in the studio is our first guest, Tom Constand. Tom is the president and CEO of the Brain Injury Association of Michigan. Prior to this role, Tom was co-owner of Star Constand Business Communications, a full-service marketing agency. Before starting his own firm, Tom was an account manager for the Franco Public Relations Group, where he worked on the region's winning bid for the Super Bowl. Tom also serves as a member of the Children's Foundation's Board of Trustees, a very involved and important member, I should say, and is past board member and board chair of the Bull Family YMCA in downtown Detroit. And a little fun fact about Tom and his family and his history, a huge part of Tom's youth included working at Jim's Garage.
That's right.
As a busboy, a waiter, a bartender, a maitre d', a cook, a dishwasher, you name it, you did it.
I did it. I did it all. That was my dad's place. So
that was your dad's place.
That's right.
And that was from high school through college, and then you were manager from 82 to 84.
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Great.
But, let's talk about your dad.
Sure.
His birthday's coming up, I think.
Yes, November 15th, my dad will be 95.
God bless him.
Yeah.
And Jim's Garage was iconic when I was a young adult living in downtown. And so just tell us a little bit, a few of your memories of Jim's Garage.
Yeah, I tell you, it was huge. In the 70s, it was one of the hot spots in Detroit. And my dad achieved a bit of celebrity status as the host, the ringmaster, the ringleader. When you would go to eat at Jim's Garage, my dad was part of the experience. Everybody would come in and say, "Where's Jim?"
Yeah.
And Jim would come out and entertain and tell jokes and cut up and generally be the life of the party. And he was the ringmaster at Jim's Garage, just as in the day Les Gruber was at London Chop House,
right.
Joe Byer at the Pottstrand Wine Cellars. So, it was a different era for restaurants in Detroit, and it was a fun time.
It was a great time, and I remember them very fondly, all three of those restaurants, but in particular your dad's place. And I'm sure you and I crossed paths.
I probably served a drink or made your food,
or asked me to leave or something. So I just had to talk about that. I'm sure many of our listeners are reminiscing as well.
Yeah.
So as a trustee of the Children's Foundation, formerly known as the Children's Hospital of Michigan Foundation, you've been very involved in our evolution as a community-based foundation. Tell our listeners about that journey viewed from a trustee's eye and what you're most excited about in our future.
Absolutely. I'm very proud to be a board member of the Children's Foundation, and I'm particularly excited about the path that we've taken to get to where we are now and then where we're going. We started out with a degree of anonymity, I guess. Nobody really knew who we were, and everybody associated the foundation with Children's Hospital for very valid reasons.
Of course.
But in our journey to become an independent organization focused on children's health, that was a very important step that we took, and it was a series of steps. And I'm proud of the steps that we took to get us to this point where we've achieved the identity that we've achieved out there. People know us, not just in Southeast Michigan, but across the state now, as one of the only organizations focused on children's health issues and the opioid crisis, in particular mental health. These are areas that are for all the unfortunate reasons, trending upwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we are of a size now where we can amass the communities that are involved in these particular issues to come together to help solve these issues. And that's been a huge step for us. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm very excited with the direction that we're taking now, becoming even more independent and more well-known across the state. We indeed now have a footprint that is statewide. And
absolutely, and thanks to you, from a marketing perspective, you've guided Jill Nelson and I and others through that with your background, and even more important, as a trustee, being so supportive of this journey. And a lot of it was sort of unknown where we were going, and now we know where we're going. And without your support and that of your fellow trustees, including Matt Friedman, it wouldn't be possible.
Well, I was going to say that. It takes a team, and the members of the board, led by Matt, are dynamic in their own right.
Yeah, so one of our focus areas that you mentioned was mental health, and one of the other focus areas is injury prevention.
Right.
So that allows us to talk to you about your day job.
Yes.
When you're not volunteering for organizations. Mm-hmm. So the Brain Injury Association of Michigan, tell us a little bit about that. Sure. And then we have a partnership now with the Children's Foundation, and so we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
Yep, very excited about that. But let me just give you a little background on the association. The Brain Injury Association of Michigan serves as the conduit organization, if you will, between some 200,000 individuals living with a brain injury in the state and their families, and this vast, broad, deep network of rehabilitative services that we have in Michigan, which is second to none in the country. So we serve as that conduit. We have 20 chapters and support groups around the state.
20.
20
wow,
that
terrific.
They meet on a monthly basis, kind of on a grassroots level in their respective communities across the state, and help individuals, caregivers, family members deal with the brain injury. And there are different parts of their journey. Some of them have just sustained it. Some of them have struggled for months and years and have begun to fall through the cracks. And so we serve as a means to bring them back up out of that crack and get them back on a path towards their own individual path of recovery.
And so we're talking with Tom Constand, is the president and CEO of the Brain Injury Association of Michigan, also a trustee of the Children's Foundation. And so you also do a fair amount of advocating, I know, because people with brain injuries have a lot of needs, and sometimes they can't represent themselves. So they need an advocate.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we are in Lansing quite a bit. We advocate on a state level. We also help our survivors advocate for themselves on an individual basis. But one of the things that we just concluded was participating in the rally that was held a week or so ago in Lansing.
Right. Saw the photos.
Regarding no-fault insurance. And what a lot of people don't know is that the law that was enacted, inadvertently, there are a couple of particularly punitive elements of it that would essentially wipe out an industry of some 15,000 individuals in the post-acute rehabilitation industry, and drastically affect some 18,000 people currently in the no-fault system. And you might say, well, 18,000 people is a far cry from 200,000 people. Why are you focused on such a small group? That's not a small group.
Right.
Imagine near capacity crowd at Little Caesars Arena and telling them all that their benefits have been cut off. So it's a sizable group.
Absolutely, and it's impacting not only them individually, but their families.
That's correct.
And loved ones.
That's correct.
So 18,000 is a lot.
So we're working with the legislature and the governor to correct some of these issues.
Good. Excellent. So I mentioned that the Children's Foundation and the Brain Injury Association of Michigan now is a partnership.
Yes.
We made a grant. Tell us about that as it relates to where it's going to happen and what's going to happen.
We are so excited and thrilled to welcome Children's Foundation on board as a partner. So excited to partner with you, Larry.
Well, it's our honor.
This is a program called Think Ahead, and it addresses the need for kids, really of all ages, to wear their helmet for individual recreational activities. In other words, we're not talking team sports, because there's already a governing body. The MHSAA, the Michigan High School Athletic Association, as an example, governs the team sports of the member high schools, and that's wonderful. They do a great job at that. There's a sports concussion law that's out there that addresses team sports and requires people to do certain things. But for individual recreational activities like skiing, snowboarding, skateboarding, bike riding.
Just going outside on your skateboard.
On the board. The only criteria that somebody uses is choice. I'm either going to wear my helmet or I'm not. And the sad fact is in bicycling, cycling, that over 88% of injuries, head injuries, could be prevented simply by wearing a helmet. However, juxtapose that against the fact that less than 50% of kids and adults actually wear the helmet that they purchased.
Okay.
So
they might have one, but they don't wear it.
Right. So we are partnering with the ongoing Think First program that's being done by DeVos Children's Hospital.
Right. Another partner of ours.
Another partner. Very excited about that. And they are teaching about safety in the school. Our program extends out into the community. And basically, it's an incentive program designed to incentivize kids for wearing their helmet. So a police officer in bike season sees a child riding with their helmet, they issue them a ticket. Well, that ticket's a discount coupon off of a food item or a retail item.
Okay.
We're going to do the same thing. We're launching this in December. We're launching it for ski season. So we're working with the ski resorts across the state to reward and incentivize kids for wearing their helmet on the slopes. Michigan is one of a number of states that doesn't have a helmet law for skiing. So about 10 states do. We don't.
And we do not have
We
one.
do not have one. So the alternative is to educate kids and incentivize them for wearing it. And so that's what the program aims to do. We aim ultimately to lessen the number of deaths and injuries from recreational sport activities where kids are not wearing a helmet.
Yeah, and how about the new sort of craze going on in cities and areas with these scooters that you can rent off your phone?
We have been in ongoing discussions with various groups about this, but that has moved so fast. It's like chasing something down a rabbit hole, trying to get ahead of it. That's an issue that we're concerned with, frankly, because there's a number of injuries. You hear the reports from the hospitals.
I see them just driving downtown Detroit once in a while. Someone flipping over on their little scooter.
And that's concerning, to say the least, for us at the Brain Injury Association for obvious reasons.
So the Brain Injury Association, we're talking to the leader there, Tom Constand. Where do you see the organization going in the next 3 to 5 years? You've been there a while now. Mm-hmm. You've done some dynamic, innovative things. And where do you see it going from here? Well,
we want to continue with that sense of innovation. I'll reference back to the no-fault situation for a bit. What that has done is changed the landscape in the state of Michigan in terms of insurance, in terms of the bridge to care for those with a brain injury. And across the country, the nation suffers from a treatment gap, where it's very difficult to gain access to the treatment services that are available. Insurance doesn't cover all of it. It's limited coverage. So our vision for the next 3 to 5 years is, what can we do as a Brain Injury Association with the organizations that we work with? How can we gather as a community and create the new landscape for coverage and for access to treatment for those with brain injury? I mentioned before there's over 200,000 individuals living with a brain injury. It's a lot of people.
That's a lot. That's 2 U of M stadiums.
Right. And so much like Children's Foundation and its approach to the opioid epidemic, with all of the members of your community and now our community in brain injury, let's bring those together and see if we can't define the landscape for access to care over the next 3 to 5 years, given the dynamics that have occurred over the last year.
Yeah, and so many of them are preventable.
Right.
So great work. Keep it up.
Thank you.
And thank you for your support of our foundation as a leading trustee, a member of our executive committee. Tom Constand, the CEO, president of the Brain Injury Association of Michigan. And coming up next, we'll hear from Sherry McRill and Wayne Bradley Sr. about how they are partnering to provide mental health services for children and families. When Caring for Kids continues, here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Welcome back to Caring for Kids on WJR, presented by the Children's Foundation.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, again in the studio, all of our guests are going to be in the studio tonight. Here with me is Sherry McRill and Wayne Bradley Sr. Sherry began working at the Northeast Integrated Health in 1989 and became president and CEO of the organization in 2014. In her role, Sherry continues to position the agency as one of Wayne County's leading behavioral health providers by adopting the integrated health care model. Sherry was recently appointed as co-chair of the Michigan Behavioral Health and Wellness Collaborative and will continue to identify opportunities to enhance patient access and care. Now, Wayne Bradley Sr. is currently the president and CEO of the Detroit Community Health Connection, known as DCHC, a nonprofit community-based primary health care organization founded in 1988 to provide comprehensive medical health care to the uninsured and underinsured residents of the city of Detroit. Wayne spent 27 years with the Wellness Plan, a state-licensed HMO, and Wayne also has served the citizens of our city as a police officer, receiving citations including the city's highest citation, the Medal of Valor. So welcome, Sherry and Wayne, to Caring for Kids, October edition. We're delighted that you're here. I mentioned that recently you were appointed as the co-chair of the Michigan Behavioral Health and Wellness Collaboration. Tell us about that, who else is involved, and what your goals are of that effort.
Well, this collaboration is made up of the 16 largest community mental health public organizations in Wayne County. It is the CEOs and their executive staff, and we come together to do advocacy on behalf of our public mental health system here in Detroit and Wayne County to promote anti-stigma views, to provide education, but primarily advocacy on behalf of our consumer population here in Wayne County.
And can you name a couple other of the 16?
Yes. My co-chair, Catherine Leisman, is from Development Centers, which is over on the west side, Southwest Counseling Solutions here in Detroit, the Guidance Center, Children's Center, which is located right down here, downtown
One
Detroit.
of our partners, one of our longtime partners.
One of your longtime partners, yep. Deborah Matthews, and all of her executive staff. So we work together to try to make sure that children get the best integrated health care available.
Wonderful. We'll talk with Sherry McRill from the Northeast Integrated Health Organization. She's president and CEO. So the Children's Foundation is all about creating partnerships and hopefully breaking down silos. And it certainly sounds like your new collaboration is doing exactly that. And so in your experience, are we making progress, number one, getting rid of the stigma of behavioral health, mental health, and are we able to bring more of these organizations together to work together? Are we making progress?
I think that we are. I think our collaboration is a good example of that. I noticed today after this interview, you're going to be interviewing a gentleman in terms of suicide awareness.
Right.
And as you and I both know from sitting on the board or the advisory committee for Kevin's song, that's a key message that is getting out. And that's a result of collaboration, so that we're helping to stamp out the stigma related to medical issues that occur above the shoulders.
Great. Wayne is president and CEO of the Detroit Community Health Connection. Tell our listeners about your organization's priorities and particularly how it relates to children, adolescents, young adults, and families.
Detroit Community Health Connection is a federally qualified health center, and that means that we have to provide services, internal medicine, pediatrics, and OBGYN. Obviously, the pediatrics is the focal point of what we're doing at the Peter Slaughter Center.
Right.
Dr. Peter Slaughter was a pediatrician. He was the first CMO of Detroit Community Health Connection.
Okay.
He passed away in 2003, but we honored him and his family in a dedication at the Peter Slaughter Center, which also tied into what our requirements as a FQHC is all about. We also had been working with the Northeast Guidance Center, which is now changed to Northeast Integrated Health Care. One of the problems that we were having as it relates to our mission is the fact that it's an adult center on Warren. And so by getting into the Kelly Road site, it met the obligations of our organization because OBGYN is handled at our facility on Jefferson
So you're collaborating, you're being innovative.
So we were going to make this work.
You were going to make it work, yes, and you have. So I need to ask you this question because in my job, I hear a lot about what you talked about, which is the federally qualified health centers. In my office, they quickly refer to them as FQHCs.
That's correct.
And so tell us what that means and how an organization becomes FQHC.
To be a federally qualified health center, you have to submit and have approved a grant, which is funded by HRSA, the Bureau of Primary Care.
Okay. That's a federal thing.
Federal dollars. And the mission of the Bureau of Primary Care is to provide services to the vast majority of people who may not have all the means necessary to get primary care.
Okay.
But then we also have additional services. We have social workers, which will help us guide our people. We have tried to have positive relationships with substance abuse organizations. What we have tried to do at DCAC is to partnership with all of the organizations that serve the population that we fundamentally are responsible for.
Okay.
We try not to turn anybody away. Our mission has been directed toward the Medicaid population. We offer free flu shots to many of our populations.
Time of the year for that.
And that's what we're in the campaign for. That's why I mentioned it.
Right, good. So, Sherry, talk a little bit about how you're partnering with Wayne and his organization.
Well, we're looking at the integrated care model, which means that we're treating holistically, whole body, all medicine, spirit, whole health, wellness, and all diseases taken into consideration, so that it is in many ways a one-stop shopping kind of operation, so they can come and get both their behavioral health care and their physical health care, including school physicals,
and a flu shot.
well checks, a flu shot.
There you go.
The RFQHC happens to offer a dental program, which is in great need for our population. And so I think about integration, the main educational message I would want to be sending out is that we're coordinating care.
So, Wayne, let me ask you, I mentioned in the intro that you're a former police officer.
Yes.
How do you think that being a police officer in Detroit had prepared you for what you're doing now?
It was the basis of how my health career got its start. The best community worker, the best social worker in that I have ever experienced was being a police officer, because sometimes you have to control your temper when other people don't.
Right.
And so it was the beginning. Also, from the standpoint of customer service, well, that's really what being a police officer was all about.
So anything else you want to mention about your collaboration or about what your organizations are doing, either together or separately, that our listeners need to know?
Well, I think that something that Sherry just said is very important also. We also have dentistry as a part of our operation. We have it only at 3 sites, but it certainly is one of the major problems, both for the behavioral health community as well as the total community.
Right, and oral health impacts a lot of other elements of our health as well. Sherry, anything in closing?
Yes, I wanted to highlight something tagging on to what Wayne said in terms of his law enforcement and criminal justice experience, and that is that we do training with the Detroit Police Department on mental health, wellness, and issues, and in fact train all the officers coming through the academy so that they can be looking at and diagnosing folks on the street who then need some coordination and some referrals. And in fact, we have a grant through our funding source, and we do ride-alongs with the Detroit Police Department so that we can do interventions on the street and get people to those substance abuse services or homeless services or mental health services, whatever it is that they need. And I think he is right. Our Detroit police officers and us in collaboration with them are the primary people on the streets that do provide good social work services. And I have to believe that through all the training and the work that we're doing, that we've had a great impact in terms of educating and working with that population as well, so that there's an anti-stigma message there within our Detroit Police Department as well.
Great, thank you. We're both doing great work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to continuing the conversation, maybe as a partner with the Children's Foundation.
Yes, we look forward to that.
Absolutely. That's Sherry McRill and Wayne Bradley Sr. And coming up next, we're going to talk to the founder of No Resolve when Caring for Kids continues here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
This is how you leave me, bleeding where I stand. I've tried so hard to figure out, I've tried to understand what could have been so hopeless and so painful that you felt it had to end. What was that final puzzle piece you couldn't get to fit? Did you take a minute to stop and think how we would deal with it? There'll be no answers to these questions. Got to carry on and try to live.
What a powerful song, No Resolve. In the studio with me is the writer of that song and founder of No Resolve, Dennis Liegghio. A little bit about Dennis. Dennis lost his father to suicide when he was a teenager, and for years he battled guilt, shame, anger, depression, and even his own suicidal thoughts. Years later, he wrote that beautiful song that you just heard part of called No Resolve that ignited his passion to raise awareness about suicide in his community and to break down the stigma associated with the topic. With the help of the family, friends, colleagues, No Resolve was born in 2007 and remaining dedicated to promoting mental health and preventing youth suicide through outreach, advocacy, and education. So, Dennis, welcome to Caring for Kids.
Thank you, Larry.
Love that song. It's very powerful. So, tell our listeners a little bit more about your journey. I mentioned that your father passed away when you were a teenager, and you dealt with a lot of different issues that impacted your behavioral mental health. And so, tell us your story.
Well, I was, as you mentioned, I was 14 when I lost my dad to suicide, and our last words were in anger. We had gotten into a fight about my math grades, and it was a frequent argument because it was my worst subject, and my dad was an accountant.
Oh, boy.
But this particular time was different. He was screaming. That had never happened before, so, I said, I hate you. I never want to see you again. Typical teenage stuff.
Yep. Yes.
And over the next couple of months, he tried to call and get a hold of me, make amends, and I was just standing my ground. I was being a defiant teenager, and so we never talked again. That was the last thing that I ever said to him.
Oh, dear. And so that obviously impacted you as a 14, 15, 16-year-old growing up with those feelings.
Yeah. My whole worldview changed. Felt like childhood was gone overnight, and I became very angry, and I blamed myself for many, many years for his death because of what I said and never got the chance to make amends.
Okay. So we're talking with Dennis Liegghio, who is the founder of No Resolve, and what you did then eventually is use music to channel some of your pain, and that led you to the creation of what we now know as No Resolve.
Yeah, music was my way out. I just started writing about all the different things that I was feeling and didn't understand, and it was an outlet for me to vent some of that stuff, and music, the people I met along the way, that the journey through that and with that is I credit in a very real way for saving my own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are dedicating your life. You and I have known each other for a year or so now, and dedicating your life with your wife and your child to this cause that we now know as No Resolve. So tell us about No Resolve, the organization, and then we'll get into some of the things that are new, which is the shed.
Okay. I started No Resolve in 2007, and I named it after the song in honor and memory of my dad. And the idea was to just do something once a year to raise awareness in our community about it, because people don't like talking about it.
Yeah,
it's
and your
uncomfortable.
community, just so people know, would be Macomb County.
Macomb County, yep. So we organized this event called Breaking the Silence, and that was the first thing we ever did. We had 500 people come out for that first
For the very first
event.
one, 500 people.
Got some bands together. We had 5 bands. It was more of a party and a concert than it is today, which is our annual gala. But back then, 13 years ago, it was a party and it was a concert, and we were trying to raise awareness about this difficult topic.
Right.
I soon started getting calls from local counselors at some of the middle schools and high schools in the area saying, "Hey, I heard about your song and your story. Can you come out and talk to the kids?" And I said, well, okay. I was still playing music at the time.
Right. You were in a band.
I was in a band,
Yep.
and I was not a public speaker, and I'm not a mental health professional, so I told them all that. And Diana Conklin, who was the counselor at L'Anse Creuse Middle School Central, the first school I ever went to, she said, just tell your story, speak from the heart, play the song, the kids will love it. And it took off from there. Within 2 years, I was getting so many speaking requests that I said, well, this has kind of become a full-time gig. What does that look like now? So we became a 501c3. We started doing our own fundraising, hosting our own events, and I was talking to 12,000 kids every year.
Yeah, wonderful. And so I mentioned the Shed.
The Shed.
Tell us about, and we're talking with Dennis Liegghio, who's a founder of No Resolve. It's a suicide prevention organization, simply put, among other things. But tell us about the Shed.
The Shed is our after-school activity center for teens by teens. In the back of my head, it was always a dream to open up a space for kids at some point down the road. That was always my long-term goal. But I didn't know what that looked like, what we were going to do, how we were going to do it. So I got a group of kids together who had been through mental health stuff, in and out of the hospital, suicide attempts, suicidal ideation. And I said, what do you guys want? What do you need? And we started brainstorming. And then they came up with the name, The Shed, and the tagline, Create, Connect, Confide. They came up with a whole whiteboard full of ideas, what they want to see happen here and what they want it to look like. Then we started raising money. And 3 years later, we signed a lease on a building, and now we're open.
Now you're open.
Now we're
and
open.
I've been there. Me and my former colleague, Dave Coulter, he goes with me, and then he becomes the Oakland County executive.
I know. He
left us.
The next day, I won't mention the radio station that I heard the news on, because I know we're here on WJR.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you questioned it, no doubt. So the Shed, tell us about the November 16th event.
November 16th is our 13th annual Breaking the Silence benefit for suicide prevention and awareness. And this is our biggest fundraiser of the year. This is where we raise most of our money to do what we do. So funding the school programs, funding for the Shed, funding for our support group for survivors of suicide loss. It's at the Mirage Banquet Hall in Clinton Township.
Okay.
And we've been doing it there every year from the beginning. Johnny does a great job for us. And there's dinner, there's drinks, there's dancing, there's live music.
Great. Judy and I will be there.
Wonderful.
And we're not going to say now, but you and I have a little surprise that night that the foundation's going to announce.
We have a secret pact.
Yes, we do. So looking forward to that. So lastly, I'm going to ask you a question about, in today's world, in high schools, what's standing out when you talk to kids? What's bothering them the most, if you can say?
What's standing out for me is the level of pressure that they feel by the time they're in 9th grade to have their life figured out. I don't remember that kind of pressure in high school. And in addition to that, the level of anxiety that they're all living with because we're connected to these devices 24/7, they're overwhelmed and inundated with information, and I think it's desensitizing them because there's so much bad news that you hear all the time.
Right.
On the flip side of that coin, they are longing to connect with us and with each other. The first day that the Shed was open, we had 2 kids come in, and I know it's going to be a slow trickle.
Yeah, right.
Well, we had 2 kids come in. They were from different schools. They didn't know each other. They didn't know us. And we did a little icebreaker activity and gave them a tour, all that. But within, I'd say, 10 minutes, they came into the front offices and said, do you guys want to play a game with us? Mm-hmm. And for me, that was the moment that validated everything that we're thinking about and trying to do. They just want to connect.
They want to connect. They want to be with people and share their thoughts and issues, maybe. And so great. So, Dennis, thank you very much. Look forward to November 16th We'll put all of that information on our website.
Wonderful.
And so if people want to know about that. So keep up the good work, and I know you're saving lives.
Thank you, Larry.
Yep, that's Dennis Liegghio. And next, you're going to hear about this month's Little Champion when Caring for Kids returns on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
So goodbye, I can't believe you're gone. So goodbye, somehow I hope that you can hear this song.
It's Caring for Kids with Larry Burns.
Welcome back, everyone. This portion of Caring for Kids is dedicated to highlighting our Little Champion. The Little Champion program honors children who have overcome major obstacles in their young lives and continue to tackle those challenges with a smile each and every day. This month's Little Champion is 6-year-old Braden from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Braden was born with Down syndrome and a heart defect. He has overcome many obstacles, such as open heart surgery as an infant. And Braden now has the ability to make others laugh and smile. He gives endless hugs, which I've received myself, and has dance moves for days. Congratulations, Braden, this month's Little Champion. For more information on the Little Champion program and how you can nominate a child, visit yourchildrensfoundation.org/champion. A couple of updates on the foundation. Join us on October 24th through the 27th for Shop for a Cause. That's hosted by Hugo Boss at Somerset Collection, a leading fashion place. And so, great place. Stop in there and help us and help yourself by getting some great clothes. Also, we're finishing up reviewing our next round of foundation grants. And in the future, we'll share where those will be going and the impact that they make. And our partnership of 70 will undoubtedly grow to something larger. So that's coming up in the next month or so. Thanks for joining us on Caring for Kids. The Children's Foundation is proud to sponsor this program, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. And for more discussion about the health and wellness of children, please join us next time here on the great voice of the Great Lakes, News Talk 760 WJR.
Caring for Kids with Larry Burns on WJR has been presented by the Children's Foundation.